So I guess I'll start with, I was going to tell the story later, but I'll start with this story. So when, quite a long time ago, a few years ago, I was refereeing a paper, and I did what I usually try to do, a very thorough job, and I even at the bottom said, these are typos. Put all that in there. 3 weeks later, I get the same paper back. These are I did one of them for JF, one of them for RFS. Anyway, I get the same paper back with the typos not even fixed, and it's only 3 weeks later. So I'm like, oh my God, really? You don't even fix the typos? So I contacted the editor, who was Maureen O'Hara. She said, send it back to me. So I sent her my referee report, and she wrote them a scathing email or a scathing letter to them, telling them how they are abusing the system. So I just want you to know that, our time is very valuable, and if we spend, days, I frequently will spend days on a referee report, it doesn't look good on you if you just ignore the person. We do our best, we try to give constructive help, and you shouldn't try to abuse the system. Realize that the referee is trying to help you, they're trying to give you good feedback, and you should respect that. It doesn't mean you always agree with everything, but you want to respect it, at least try to address it. So if you get an R&R, I don't know if you guys ever, how many of you have submitted something, but the email comes and you look and you know it's from the editor and you're like, oh my God. And your heart's beating and you're scared. And you're like, what's going to happen when I open it? And then you're either sad or you're like jumping on the ceiling, you're so happy until you read it, right? All right, so once you get well, let me also say that it's not always clear that you have an R&R. I have had assistant professors come to me and said, oh, I got rejected. And I look at it and I'm like, you know what, you didn't get rejected. That's an R&R, and it's actually a really good one. They're like, it is? I thought I was rejected. So always, first thing you want to do is make sure you were rejected. Show it to somebody. Get some feedback. So once you know it's an R&R, congratulations, you have a foot in the door. So I always look at that as I have an opportunity, and so I don't want to blow it. And I will tell you, over the years, I've heard more and more people have come, my friends and colleagues have gotten rejected in an advanced round. And so that's something I haven't had happen yet. So that's really scary. But the last journal I went to, we went 5 rounds, and each round the editor told us, this was a JE, every round he said, well, you might choose to go somewhere else. And so every time it was like, we don't like you, but we're going to give you a chance. And so every round we tried our best to address what they said, and eventually we got in. But it wasn't an easy process. It took 2 years, and it was my hardest that I've ever done. But I just want you to, first and foremost, make sure that you are listening to them and you're open to what they're telling you, because if you've gotten your foot in the door, don't mess it up, right? So you want to first thing read through the report. So I'll read through the report. But I frequently don't even know all the things they're asking me to do. It's like, I don't even know what that means. And I get, I have no idea how I'm gonna address it, and I'm really scared. And so what I do is I put it away, but in the background, I'll be thinking about it. And I'll put it away for at least a week, maybe longer, and then I'll go back and start looking at each point. So frequently I want to mention you'll have 2 referees and a letter from the editor, which that can seem really overwhelming. And so that is one of the reasons why I put it away for a little bit. Then when it comes time, I'll pull up the reports and I'll read them each carefully, again. And what you want to focus on is, what does the editor think is important? You want to make sure that you're addressing what the editor tells you is important. Now, at the same time, you might have one referee who loves your paper and one who hates it. It's very rare that you're going to have everybody who loves your paper. And so you have to figure out, how do I address those different people? And that's where following what the editor tells you is probably important to start with that. So you want to look at what are the big picture issues and what are the smaller issues. And you want to make sure you address all of them in some way. But one of the things that I think really helps is your paper, you should be presenting it at home, at conferences, get people who read other people's papers, ask them to read yours, so you're getting feedback, because that'll start to guide you as to what's important and what's not. If you start hearing the same thing over and over again, you realize, I'm going to need to address that. And you have to decide, is this empirical writing issues do I have to deal with? And a lot of times, things won't be that clear to me. So it takes time for me to figure out and sort of get to the referees or the editor's head. I think that comes with time, working with the report. So what you want to do is make a plan. And so what I do is I copy my referee reports into Word, and then I start looking at, well, which ones can I do? And so I'll start with the ones all right, I know how to do that, I know how to do that, I know how to do that, and I'll do the ones I know. And then the things that are confusing to me, I realize once I start doing the things I know, over time, the ones that are confusing become clear, and it's not so hard for me to figure out what to do. The more I kind of just start living with that paper and with that report. And so you also, as you have the report, you want to start making notes. How am I going to address these things? And talk to your co-authors if you have co-authors about how you're going to do it. So I want to make sure that you realize there's a balancing act between doing everything the referee and the editor want you to do and then what you think is a good paper. So you want to kind of balance that. But like I said, you're never going to want to ignore anything the referee or editor tell you. So I'll give you some ideas of this. So what's the worst type of rejection? One that doesn't address the important things. You have to figure out what is important, what is really bothering the editor or a referee, what do they think is important, make sure I address that. And then the other thing that's really a bad paper or a bad revision is when you do everything they tell you to, and then you read it, the paper's kind of schizophrenic. So I've had papers where I'll look at some papers for a friend of mine, and I'll read it and I'll say, you know, that really just sticks out there. What is that in there for? Oh, the referee told me. Well, that's a bad incorporation of a referee comment. So that's a comment where you haven't really embraced it. You need to embrace it and figure out, how do I address this comment? So you have to think about, do I need to reposition the paper? What is the referee talking? Are they talking about motivation? Are they talking about the contribution? Are they talking about the clarity? So if it's clarity, you need to rewrite it. And I think what Cliff said about what he said about it's not the referee who's wrong, it's you who are wrong. Either you didn't explain it right, or you weren't being clear, or something along those lines. So if the referee doesn't get it, you need to go back and what did I say, or how could I say this better so that they'll get it, right? And so I think somebody mentioned getting the introduction right. That is key. So I will frequently, people ask me to read their whole paper. I don't have time to read their whole paper. So I'll just read the introduction and give them feedback. Introduction, abstract. That is the moment you have to sell your paper. So you want to make sure you work on that introduction over and over and over until it's really good. I've had PhD students do introductions like 20 times or longer. Just make them keep doing it until it's right. So make sure you have colleagues and friends. Like I said, people frequently will say, I don't have time to read the whole paper. If you say, would you read a 5-page introduction? Hardly anybody's going to say no to that. And also, I might say yes, and then it doesn't get done because I'm too busy. But if it's 5 pages, it's like, how can I not do that 5 pages, right? So where do you address the comments of the referee and the editor? There's several places you can actually put it. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the main body of the paper. You can put it in a robustness section, which also discusses the results but doesn't report them. You can put it in a footnote. You can put it in the internet appendix. You can put it in the response to the referee. So you want to figure out where you're going to put that. So you go back to your Word document and then look, where am I going to address these issues? And depending on how important it is, like if you think it's going to push your paper into an area or into a way that your paper isn't really written, you might decide to make an internet appendix. So what you want to do is go back to your Word. So once you're ready to write your referee response, go back to your Word document. And then what I do is I use that. Here's the point that you made to the referee or editor, and here's my answer, all right? And so you want to edit it. So there's 2 approaches to do this. It's a matter of preference. Whether you put word for word what they had, and then you have your thing below it, or whether you summarize what they said. This is what you said in point 1, roughly. I tend to just copy what they said. And then I'll put that in italic, and then I will respond to it. And frequently, I will say, thank you for this. Now, I have co-authors who like to say thank you for everything. And I said, you know, that looks a little kiss butt. I think you should probably say thank you to the ones that are important and probably not say thank you to everything. Thank you, you were right, we were wrong. That's a little over. So either one of those is okay. So you're going to have what they said and then how you responded to it. And so you don't want to ignore anything. It's just a question of how did I address it? And so I've received responses that are like 20 pages long, and that's overwhelming. So other people like very detailed responses. So how do you balance between those? So one thing you might do, and we did this with the JEE, is we would put a 1 to 2 page summary of this is what we did big picture. And then we have attached, here's your points, and here's how we address them in detail. So I think that is a nice way to balance between giving them too much and giving them too little. You can provide supplementary responses. So with our JE, for example, we had so many extra tables. So we made, this is a response to the referee. Here, we did all these robustness checks. We can put them in the paper if you want, but we think the paper's too long already, and so here's what you wanted to see. So make sure you're responding to them, offering them to put in the paper, but if you don't really think it goes in the paper, don't put it in there, but make sure you're open to it and that it could be put in the paper if you need it. All right, so how many of the editor's comments do you address in the body of the paper, or in with the reports reported, with the results reported in the table? How many do you put in with the results published in the internet, in the appendix? How much do you put in the footnote? How much do you put only in the response? Well, if it's the editor's comments, I would put most of them in the paper with the tables, all right? If it's the referees, you might kind of more balance these, all right? But again, try to figure out what's important to them and make sure that you don't ignore it. And like I said, I wouldn't ignore anything. And I've had junior faculty give me their responses, and I'll look at that and say, you know, you're kind of fighting with them, you're not addressing it, you're ignoring them. Don't do that. That's the kind of stuff that gets you rejected in an advanced round, and that happens so much lately. Can't emphasize enough. Make sure you keep the editor and the referees happy. So, should you try to should you try to guess the identity of the referee? Well, it doesn't matter when I say everybody does, all right? And but be careful, because it can affect how you handle the revision. Be careful, because you might not be right. So I'll give you an example of that. I had a paper on the Jobs Act, the first one we did on the Jobs Act, and I had a sense, because my lockup paper had been refereed 20 years earlier, 10 years earlier, by Jay Ritter. And when we got the response from the lockup, I said, I think Jay Ritter's our referee. And I wasn't sure, but I was pretty sure. And I know how he thinks about things, so I'm like, you know, we need to make sure that we sort of take, how would he look at this, and make sure we're addressing how he would look at it. So we did that, and it turned out it was Jay Ritter. But you're not always right, as John pointed out. So be careful. This is for John. I didn't even know he was going to say that. So be careful who you talk about the revision to, right? So not only did John tell me that this referee gave him lots to do, but first of all, he tells me, Laura, I said, how are you doing? Oh, I had a great start to the day. I won an award for the best paper in the JPE for the last 4 years. It was like such a high, and I was so happy. And then I went to my mail, and I got a rejection. I'm like, you got rejected? Because I knew he didn't get rejected. So I'm like, you got rejected? And he's like, no, but that referee needs to get a life. So I didn't let him know it was me, because I was too embarrassed. Anyway, so be careful. You never know who the referee is, all right? So avoid saying negative things about the referee. People talking to them, all right? And there's a higher probability than you realize that you might be talking to the referee, because typically the people that are going to referee the paper are people in your area, which are people that you're going to be talking to, all right? And like I said, this has happened to me several times. I wasn't even thinking about John when I wrote that down. But somebody assumes I'm not the referee, and I am. And then other times people think I'm the referee, and I'm not. So just be careful, all right? But even more importantly, I would say, is when you get rejected, this is what I was saying earlier, you might get the same referee again. So you have to be careful. That happens a lot, all right? And not only that, but not just you might get the same referee, but you might get the referee's co-author, the referee's friend. So I'll tell you, Michelle Lowry and I were at Penn State together, and I would always say, Michelle, I got this referee report, and I'm kind of struggling. What do you think, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can't tell you how many times Michelle later, or I later, one of us had gotten the referee, that paper to referee, and then later another one of us got to referee. Now, that still happens to us now, but what's even more interesting is that now that I work at Delaware, and Fachier is one of my colleagues, they and I don't have our research overlap that closely, but yet he and I end up getting the same referee reports a lot, and it has shocked me. So I know there's a lot more overlap than you even realize. And sometimes I will talk to friends, because I'll say, you know, I think I'm being too harsh, what do you think? So I tend to talk about it, and they tend to talk to me. So just be careful and realize this is one thing I want to tell you guys that nobody's mentioned yet. It's a really small community, and we gossip, all right? And so don't say stuff like when you're on the job market, don't tell people, I really love I really want to be in the Northeast, and then tell somebody else, well, I really want to live in San Diego, and tell somebody else, I really want to live in the Midwest, because we all talk, and it gets, I mean, you'd be surprised how much we gossip and tell each other about each other. All right, so just be careful when you do, realize your reputation is at stake when you submit a report to a journal. So you've got to remember that and treat it very seriously, and don't play games. Try to really take what they're telling you seriously. All right, so I've told you this before. Okay, so don't be that person, all right, who ignored the referee response. Who ignored, so don't be, this is what I'm saying. When you get a referee report, I was thinking about the person who ignored my typos even. Don't be that person, all right? All right, so in summary, does your paper provide a consistent focus point? Make sure when you're writing your when you're revising your paper that it's clear, and that your paper isn't like running all over the place trying to follow what the referee did. Do what the referee tells you, but be careful that your paper is still cohesive. Don't lose the big picture when you're trying to address all the small details. I can't tell you how many times I look at papers and I can pick out what the referee made them do. Don't make your paper look like that. Make it look like you actually listen to the referee and you incorporated it in a reasonable way. And if it doesn't fit reasonably, put it in an internet response, in an appendix, tell them you'd be happy to put it in the paper if they want you to. So make sure you discuss any of the editor and referee bid comments in the introduction, incorporate any new results into the tables. Make sure your response has an overview of the main changes, so have a page, this is what we did, these are the major things we did, and then detailed comments after that, all right? And I think that's it, yeah. All right, thank you.